Welcome back to the House Judiciary Committee. It's now Thursday afternoon, February 28th, continuing some testimony on H 410. And I first. I think we were going to hear from Ken McManus first.
First.
But actually, I'm going to. I need to hear from Monica and Robin first, because we need to talk a little bit about the definition of recidivism, which is really what I'm asking Kim and the DOC folks to weigh in on. And so there's almost maybe some confusion about what the definition is.
Well, we'll explain that.
Excellent. Well, perfect.
Yeah. So that chair is free.
Yeah.
It's Ian's bag. Get rid of it.
Available. So you can identify yourselves and.
We're live already? Okay.
We are.
All right, okay. I'm Monica Weaver. I'm the Executive Director of the Crime Research Group.
And I'm Dr. Robin Joy. I'm the Director of Research for Crime Research.
So yeah, there was a little confusion. So we're looking at version 2 of H 410 from 12:02 p.m. now. Which Council sent out a new draft. In the section 1, definitions. Definition of recidivism. So the second sentence here is, I believe, the change that was made. So the first sentence is basically recidivism is defined as an individual who's convicted of a crime after receiving a conviction for a previous crime. Okay, so that's drastically different than the current definition. The second sentence is describing how that will be calculated. And so currently it says that the recidivism will be calculated from the date of the prior conviction to the date of the subsequent. So what we mean here is you're guilty of one crime and you become a recidivist when you have been convicted and as guilty of a future crime. The previous part of that definition had an arraignment date. And the arraignment date is the date on which we would say you became a recidivist, so that we could calculate the time in became
a what?
a recidivist, which is not really yeah. So
we're looking to see, did you get convicted again? So that means everyone thinks you did some. We all think that something happened, right? You did something and you got convicted. But now we want to know how soon after you were eligible to release, after you were eligible to be convicted, did you actually commit that new offense? And because it can take a long time for somebody to get actually convicted, we go back in time and look at the arraignment dates. That was the date that we're going to say you became a recidivist.
So you became a recidivist 1 year, 2 year,
Yeah.
90 days. The arraignment itself does not qualify as becoming a recidivist. It needs to be the conviction.
Right.
So in the example we discussed, if we're looking at a 3-year period and someone doesn't get convicted until 4 years, then they're not a recidivist in that cohort, right? Until the next time around.
So the arraignment.
They're not a recidivist.
Irrelevant.
The arraignment's irrelevant.
Yeah, the arraignment will be like a chart that we show you.
Yeah.
That says the time to recidivate, because this is often the question. How long did somebody go during that 3 years to recidivate? And that time is going to be calculated from the date they're eligible, which is either the date the DOC releases them or the date that they were sentenced to a non-custodial sentence. And to the date of the arraignment of the next conviction within those 36 months.
So this is cutting kind of a fine line. So you're not called a recidivist until the conviction.
Correct.
But you've recidivated. But that doesn't make sense either. You haven't recidivated until you've actually been convicted. But the date by which you could actually go back. Why are we looking at the date of arraignment? Why don't we look at the date the crime occurred?
Because not all the data sources have that information.
Right.
So that's why we use the date of arraignments, that is consistently accurate across all data sources, as opposed to the date of the incidents, which may not be accurate, right? Because you may go away on a 3-day weekend, not realize that you've been burglarized. We don't know what date that happened. The date of arrest isn't always in all data sources. So trying to limit and also increase reproducibility of our work. The date of arraignment is the date that we would use to calculate how long until somebody, it's the closest we can get to saying that somebody, this is how quickly people are reoffending.
Right. And I guess then why don't we go back to where we talk about the date of the arraignment being the date that you calculate? So it's either not relevant for this. I mean, I don't think you say, all right, you become a recidivist at the date of the second conviction, but you recidivated at the date of arraignment. That doesn't make any sense to me. It's one or the other.
Well, I think what we're saying is there's, as Robin said, the time that it took. You're a recidivist when you at the guilty conviction. That's very clear. The other measure is a different measure. Right. And so both of those things can be calculated and shared. But the recidivism definition is very clear.
So by using the arraignment, you folks are the numbers people. And I mean, you understand numbers better than anybody. So with that, by using the arraignment date, do you believe that it's going to give you more accurate information, I guess?
It gives you more information about the criminal behavior of the people that you're measuring.
Okay.
And so we can give you a percentage and say that people who are convicted of this crime or whatever, people who are convicted are reconvicted again. The recidivism rate is 10%. I'm going to throw out and make it up numbers here. 10%. That tells you a thing. It also tells you something that 70% of people who were recidivists committed that new offense within a year, right? What that tells you is that we tend to give programs about 3 years of influence on somebody. So if I go to treatment, we think that treatment will last about 3 years in adjusting my behavior. So if everyone who's going through that program, for example, is recidivating within a year, right? So it's just giving you two different pieces of information that you can use. One's going to be a number with a percent sign next to it. The other one's going to be a chart, and it's going to show you, here's how many people within 1 year of being eligible were committing a new offense.
And then Barbara.
You worked out conviction for that number. Would that be unreliable because you may not have a conviction and it's gone in a global resolution or something as well?
So we look for any conviction within that period of time. This isn't one where I have to count plus or minus 30 days to kind of get
it.
It
theoretically wrapped up in the one that you've already counted. No?
I only count once.
Only count once.
Yeah. I just checked. Did you get a conviction? What's the first arraignment date for the conviction? Right. So I'll take the earliest. If you've got a lot of convictions within that 3-year period, I'm going to take the first.
So I've got 2 questions. I think I know the answer to each one of them. If somebody's found innocent, then obviously they're not a recidivist, which is important why it's the conviction, right?
Correct. And not the arraignment.
But what if there's like a plea deal? How do you account for that?
If the plea results in a finding of guilt, so I admit to guilt, whether it's no contest or whatever, doesn't matter. Then if the court is treating it as a guilt, yeah.
And will you be, I guess that doesn't matter for recidivism, but will you be looking at what the charge was and what the plea was?
No, not for this measure, no.
Right, okay.
Okay.
No stumping you.
So
Now, do you want us to go sit down or do you want us to have
I have another question on this. Why do we need the second sentence at all then?
That's a good question. It could be a carryover because in the current definition of recidivism, it does outline how it's calculated. But
You mean the current bad definition
the
of?
current definition in Title 28 does describe how it should be calculated. And so
I see.
Yeah.
All right, well, why don't you proceed to us about the reports?
okay. So now we'll be in this section on reports, and in reports, we wanted to talk about the dates. Right?
Yes, that was one thing, right?
Right. And so I think, our questions are, we can make a variety of dates work. I think what I would say is if we're looking at something like NIBRS or judiciary data, where you're going to want an entire year of data, right? So we'll get judiciary data for December in January, and then we can start to update it. The earliest we could get something to you for a calendar year would be March. But it really depends on when you want to look at things and what is more important for your decision making and policy. And then we'll kind of work around that. Some data then would be older or newer based on the time frame that you pick.
So I think the timeframe's more of when, how soon can we have the previous year's data? Or maybe it's the year before that. I don't know how that
Right.
works. So I'm looking to, like, when is the data available? How long does it take you generally?
Well, so for NIBRS data, it's usually like NIBRS 25 will come out later this year.
September.
September,
Yeah.
and so then we give you 24 NIBRS data now.
Right.
And so we can always update it with whatever the most current year is for NIBRS. With the judiciary data, if we wanted it in a calendar year, then we need to wait a couple months into the new year.
Right.
Um,
So I'm asking, what would be the date that you would want?
okay,
Because I understand, it's like, when can it be available? And, we adjust by that. I mean, if the data is not available and you don't have the time to get us the data, why should I put a January 1st date when that's impossible?
right,
And it may be data that's going to affect like a following session.
right. Sorry.
By the rate the way it's going, because we're not going to have data that we can incorporate into bills for a current session that's based on the previous.
Then I would say you could do it sort of later into the year, more, and a fall
We can say
type of.
July 1st.
You could say July. I was kind of thinking, something around those lines.
But then again, if we get it filled during session, if it's available, then we can start thinking about what we're going to do the following session.
That's right too. So if you wanted it in March or
Oh.
April,
How about April
April
1st?
1st, let's do
Like
that.
April 1st.
That's a nice little negotiation back and forth, I feel like. April 1st sounds good.
That's a memorable day.
Is that a good day?
Yeah.
Do you want to say April 2nd, so we're not, saying that is, April Fools on us on that day?
Fine,
Okay, all right.
fine with April.
She'll make
Okay.
sure I don't actually pull an April Fool's joke on you.
Yes, it's a good time to work. That's right.
I'm tempted.
Fine. It could be March 31st, is that 31 days, March? Yeah.
Right.
Would you prefer March 31st? Okay, we'll go April 1st. I'm negotiating against myself somehow. Okay, moving on.
Moving on. Okay.
We all
Bail rates, I don't have anything to add on the bail rates. This is language that came from Act 40. We have already produced a fair amount of these data in our Act 40 report. We're continuing to work with the judiciary to update the extract they provided us because there were some questions. So we're working on those, and we're receiving information from the Department of Corrections. So we'll be able to combine these two data sets to be able to provide what we think will be a very helpful study on that.
Okay.
If you have any questions? No, okay.
So, all right, go ahead. I have a question, but I'll talk first and then I'll ask the question. No, it's the recidivism.
The recidivism. Okay, so the recidivism measure, we've already described the definition, which is repeated here. And so that rate will give you a rate annually that is, and it's a lagging indicator, right?
Right.
So we're going to be looking at people who are eligible to recidivate. This is going to be different than the way it's currently, right? And so
Hopefully.
we're going to be looking at people who are eligible to, and their eligibility. So on April 1st, or prior to April 1st, we'll think about if we were doing this on March 1st, right?
Yeah.
We'll look at everyone who's eligible, who we're able to follow for 36 months, right? So that's the 3-year window. And then we'll look at those individuals and we will calculate the recidivism rate based on that 36-year look back period.
So you essentially would take the cohort of 2024, if we're gonna do it for 2027, and look at
Yeah.
whether they have committed a crime in those previous 3 years.
Correct, yes.
The following year, you would,
You would do 2025
Oh, you-
and then do 26. and do-
but you would look at the 2024, 25, and 26 cohort, because you could have somebody from last year who.
Don't think of it in years.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not gonna be doing that here.
So it'll be a measure of those people who are eligible to recidivate for 3 years or less or more, right? So just, did they have?
What eligible to recidivate is?
Sure, so eligible to recidivate means they were released from custody. And so they're out on the street and all of life is happening to them. Or that they were sentenced to fine, or they were sentenced to probation, right? So your date to be eligible to recidivate depends on those factors.
Okay.
So from the date that you became eligible, did you have at least 36 months to recidivate? And if you did, then your 3-year recidivism rate is,
I see.
right? So
I got
don't worry so much the way that it's been, where your cohort by year of release, right? Which is how the current system is done, or by necessarily year of conviction. You're looking at overall, did you have 36 months to recidivate? And so you're about to get a report from us on DUI recidivism. We covered 10 years. We looked at people who, did you have 3 years to recidivate? This is how many had 3 years to recidivate. This is what your recidivism rate is. And we looked at 5 years. This is fewer people were eligible to recidivate for 5 years, but this is what that 5-year recidivism rate was. Even fewer people were eligible for 10 years, but this is what that 10-year recidivism rate was.
How much more complicated, if we would decide we wanted to do a 3, 5, 10-year, what does that do to the cost of such a
Doesn't,
Yeah.
if the code is already done.
code?
The code is already done. The difference is how far back, because I do have to give people 10 years to recidivate, right? So for this cohort that we did for DUI, some of this is pre-COVID stuff. That COVID backlog is impacting some of those recidivism rates, at least on the time to recidivate calculation, not whether they did, but so you'll see that in the report. So yeah, it doesn't matter. I just think that I don't know that I would start with 10 years right now.
Yeah.
Is it 3, 5?
Yeah.
Just if it's not.
I can tell you that out of the DUI report that we're about to release, that 70% of those people who did recidivated in the first 3 years.
Yeah, so this definition of recidivism and this method of calculating recidivism is dramatically different from the system that's currently in place. And so it really is a shift.
But it's the way that you calculate recidivism, it sounds like.
In studies, correct, yeah. So,
Okay, all right.
all right. So is that the question?
Yeah, that was my question.
Your question?
Yes, yeah. that
Okay.
explanation. Great, thank you.
So the next section on arrest,
So you do other studies that you calculate recidivism different than what we're changing?
no. We do studies that are, and we use the way that's being presented in 410.
Right, yes.
Correct.
We do not use the way that
We
it
do
is
not use the
currently,
statutory.
right, because your
measure.
recidivism rate for DUI 1 would be 0.
Yeah,
Because they all get
they all
fines,
get-
Okay.
right?
They're not, right.
Right, and that's not true.
Okay,
Right, so arrest and clearance rates, again, this is from Act 40. We just asked Legislative Council to make sure that it was clear that we were going to be using data that comes from the National Incident-Based Reporting System. Again, these data are already available in the Act 40 report, so people can start looking at those.
And they are also public, and you can download these data on an individual level basis and conduct the analysis, or people can reproduce our work.
Okay,
Okay, section 4, I know that the title of this was, and then so we actually have some ideas and questions for you. Right now it's called most adjudicated crimes, which could mean these are the crimes where people were most found guilty. We could do most charged crimes. We could do both. We could do top 10 or top 20. Yeah.
So there's not much difference between whether it's, since you want the sentences, right, then the guilty is what kind of matters, right? Because people, there's not much difference between the top 10 charged and the top 10 convicted. They're really the same. Yeah.
right.
And the question is, do you want to expand it to 20, the top 20 offenses? We've
Price?
Yeah.
For the same price.
No, I was thinking the same thing.
The reason for that is because, as Robin has said many times, is it's really just in the coding. And once the primary coding is done, it's not that hard to expand it to something.
So but the thing is, right, then you're going to get down into small numbers that don't matter. So if I looked at, let me just actually make sure I know what I did. All right, so I'm just going to get you the top 20 in 2025.
So one of the questions is whether to call it the top 20, or are we gonna say most?
You could say most
Or,
convicted, or most what?
Prevalent.
Most prevalent, yeah.
oh. Okay.
Except that people will be like, what does that mean?
Right, I mean, I think if we want to be really
I think,
clear.
yeah, I mean,
we
I
could
think it's
use-
helpful to say that it's top 20 and just,
If we're thinking most prevalent as far as language goes, and I'm gonna use the top 20, we might as well say.
Top 20, yeah.
yeah.
And
So,
if you want to use convicted.
so it makes it sound like we like these crimes. How about?
Oh, okay.
See what you're saying.
So, 'cause it's like a list of like popular, okay, all right, yeah.
Top 20 crimes. So 20 crimes with the highest number of convictions.
Okay,
There you go.
that's a good way of saying it.
Sound like David Leonard.
Okay, so we'll do the, convictions.
Karen, may I say?
Okay. Please.
Just trying to understand what we're getting at with this. So this is ones that lead to conviction.
Yeah.
Correct.
I just feel like that is very different from those that are charged, right? Because you could have crimes that are charged, but it doesn't actually lead to a conviction. So what are we trying to get at with that? Like, we want to know which ones have gone through the system. I feel like I would also be interested in knowing what ones are being charged and then don't lead to anything.
It does include the type of, so we'll give you the number, the type, and we'll give you the sentences for it. So I think that's the interesting thing too, because a lot of times people are asking us about the sentences for those,
Yeah, it's right.
for those like most common charges. So
Right. So it's not,
really related to the sentences.
yeah.
We're trying to
Not-
track trends of what the sentences
Yeah,
are,
yeah.
and those crimes may be shifting as far as what are the top most sentence crime, but we're getting an idea of what the going rate is of sentencing. So-
Right.
But they might not be the most prevalent
They are.
crimes. They are the ones that are the most
They are.
convicted.
They're often the same. Yeah. It's in the years that I've been doing this, it's violations of conditions of release, DUI, misdemeanor retail theft, misdemeanor assault, misdemeanor domestic violence. DLS is just forever in the top there. Yeah. So it doesn't really change what gets charged and what's get convicted. It's about, you're not missing that much.
All right, so you'll change that using the language that you've just shared, and that's fine. Yeah. Okay, so now this one, B, for B, is interesting idea around the total combined years of probation and incarceration sentenced by the court in the prior year. So it'll give you, I'd actually, Robin was just doing some back of the
Yeah.
napkin analysis here.
So this,
Yeah.
this comes from, the district attorney out of Philadelphia, and they're a very data-driven, organization. They have a whole university attached to help them, so it's kind of not fair, yeah. But he publishes, every kind of what is the lifetime years that people were, that the system sentenced folks to. So just looking at 2025 and only looking at sentences to straight time and only one sentence per docket. So if somebody was sentenced to 5 consecutive, or 5, it's usually concurrent, but 5, concurrent sentences, I only looked at one. In 2025, the judiciary sentenced people to a total of 981 years, like lifetime years of incarceration. So if you take the 981 years, multiply that by the cost of a state bed, right? Which was sometimes what we used to use as a measure of the cost of the system. That's if everyone does the minimum, that's how much 981 years of incarceration of the judiciary sentenced people.
Right, would it, I don't know how much we can compare counties unless it's like per capita, the type.
Well, so this would look at, all right, so 981 years, what's driving that? It could be, and this doesn't include life sentences because that's on the max. So this is the min, right? So on the min, what's driving that 981 years? It could be, right, that that what's driving it is, and I'm just going to pick on Wyndham. It could just be, or actually now you're in Windsor, right? So it could be that the Windsor State's attorney is actually just sentencing everyone who does violations of conditions of release to 20 days. And that's actually what's driving that number, not say sexual assault or some of the things that actually really give big crimes. So it's going to look at what crimes are causing or are contributing to the minimum sentences, and then is there a difference in the counties? And you can get rid of counties. You just always ask me about counties. So if I
So we just put it in there to preempt the question,
Yeah.
I would say.
Okay.
Maybe this was already covered, so I apologize. But with these different reports, are we gonna have it broken down by demographics at all? Yes, for all, like, that's just assumed in all of these.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, we don't need to be specific or anything.
You can if you want.
You can if you want. It's something that we do standard, but we have no problem if you have.
But is that, well, I'm just thinking for the,
I think it makes sense to add it, just to be clear.
if it's not
Yeah.
you, it's
Yeah.
not that.
That makes
No, we
perfect-
had that in the Act 40.
In Act 40, yeah.
Yes, definitely. So, I mean, the idea is, and I will suggest to folks between now and tomorrow, if you want to really understand what this data is that we would be buying, if we all agree with this, is look at the link I sent to you that will show you essentially kind of along the lines similar to what the reports on the type data, I'm referring to the Act 40.
Yeah, absolutely.
The bail, the sit.
But do you agree that we want language in here to make that very
Yes,
clear? Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I mean,
trust both of you.
no, that makes sense in case it's somebody else in the
For
future.
anybody else in the future, yeah.
There was language along those lines in
There is language in Act 40 about that, correct.
Right.
Okay, so that's that section. Any more, do you have questions that make?
I don't think so.
So, and then the data sharing, again, it was very helpful to have this. I will say our partners are really wonderful, and we're, other than the usual challenges in data sharing, it's that we don't have any barriers to accessing the data that we need. So I'm very happy with that. Great relationship with the Department of Corrections and the Judiciary and, our other partners.
And we're not saying that because they're in the room. We just.
Yes, we would say that anyway.
And so do we need any of the other language as far as, or I know in the Act 40, the reports talk about the data and the deficiencies or the issues you've faced, or is that pretty common practice to be doing that, whether we put it in here or not?
Put something about the data quality in it and the data quality and the limitations. It's very standard in the
Yeah, that's
reports that we produce.
So we don't need to put in everything that's standard in it.
Yeah.
Any other questions for us? I was gonna have you show us those, but instead, I think.
Yeah.
folks-
Oh, yeah, no, I think that's
Yeah,
fine.
folks on their
Yeah,
own.
yeah.
However they care.
So.
Yeah.
Program. Like you were saying, if somebody does treatment, like think about 3 years. So are the options or variables significant if somebody is housed at one facility versus another, or if they are in the, I don't know, I'm not sure, I'm trying to think of a group or whatever. Like, does that,
Doesn't matter. None of those variables are going to be, in terms of the recidivism measure, they're not going to be brought into that analysis. It kind of goes back to what we said here last time, talking about or 10.
Yeah.
Around if you want to do some specific research into something specific.
like it's, right,
Yeah.
Yeah. And, and it just an important limitation of administrative data. Administrative data is very easy to do this work on. It does not tell us how well supported that person was when they were released. Did they get treatment? Did they get employed? Did they have family that cared? Right? None of that is there. This is just
right.
There you go.
It's
Right.
yeah.
And remember, we said it points you to whether or not there's something working or not working in the criminal justice system. It doesn't tell you what that is. Right? That requires more study, more research. Right? Exactly.
Karen.
So going back to, this seems like a great deal. And the fact that we've now added other things.
We are an affordable option for you all. Yeah.
But just knowing that we're in a very tight budget year, like there's no guarantees on things. So I just want to clarify that if that funding isn't there, even though it is a great deal, we wouldn't expect these reports to be done.
That's my understanding. Yes.
Clarify that in here, because we're asking for these reports every year.
Right. But I think that gets clear in the appropriate. I can ask.
I just want to, and for us to be clear that
I think
if the funding isn't there, we're not
that
getting it.
happens a lot where the bill down there, they strip money and it ends up at the bill policy goes all the way through. And the money's not there and then the policy's not issued. But we can just double check.
these are not retired volunteers.
Yes.
Right.
Right. Thank you for raising that point.
So if you have your arraignment date and then your conviction, that's the only date it says. I suppose they don't get a convicted for some strange reason. It's not included in. And there's no way to determine really why that, did they die? Are they out?
I know if they're dead. I know if they,
You will know
yeah,
that.
I will know if they passed. And so we always report out on how many have passed and remove them from the analysis.
Actually, I had one other question on the definition. We talked about in this updated draft 1202 still has the a habit of, and we were talking about in line 10.
Right.
It should be, as used in this chapter, recidivism means a relapse into criminal activity. And getting rid of a habit of.
That was the recommendation I gave to
Getting rid of a habit of or putting a habit of.
getting rid of it.
Okay, all right. So just so when other folks are commenting on this, I just want them to know that is going away. All right, thank you very much. So Kim, if you could join us and certainly can weigh in on anything, but mainly wanted you here to weigh in on the recidivism definition. And if any of this data is stuff that's going to impinge on your work, which I think this is.
Good afternoon. For the record, Kim McManus, Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs. The definition, we do support the definition. This was something that we had recommended last year as the change, and so we do appreciate it. And I have had to have Monica and Robin explain to me the point with the arraignment. So it takes a few times to go through it, but then it makes sense. And when you see it on paper, it'll really make sense. So we do appreciate that and we do support it. I do have just a few comments And then I think some of you know this already, but only to really set our expectations on what we're going to get from this data. For the bail piece, just a reminder that these are snapshots of what bail is. Bail can change over the life of a case. So I imagine the report will put that sort of qualifier around it of when that bail information is being captured, whether it's at arraignment or soon after. But just a reminder that bail fluctuates in the life of a case. So that's always a moving target. But again, as long as that's captured.
And I think that, and just on this point, rather than saying, do essentially what you did for the Act 40, because the data on bail, as I read it, at least kind of captures those things. And the intent is that it's going to be capturing those same things without having to have an exhaustive list of all those things, right? Am I right? Yeah. Okay.
We just wanted to highlight that because we know, and again, what we greatly appreciate about this is that the Statistical Analysis Center would be pulling all these data points and putting all the data points together in a report so that we can then all look at it and analyze it and see what's in there. But bail is always a tricky one, so just highlighting that. I think this has been corrected now in the previous conversation that subsection 4, that you're looking at convicted crimes. We were going to suggest a different word than adjudicated, because that's a bit confusing since that just means a formal judgment, which could mean in any direction. But if you're just looking at convictions and what's convicted, that is fine. I would like to say, Representative Dolan, you raised an excellent point. The convictions, that section would of course just be showing convictions, and there are many crimes charged that go to diversion. So we would be not capturing that difference, but if we're looking at convictions and we would get that information, you would not be getting everything charged and then kind of where it goes from there. That would be a different data point.
So, and I think that that's already separately getting caught in the diversion report that I'm getting. I mean, the number of cases that have been diverted and how many successful. And this,
Right.
I know, well, that'll be next time.
Okay, we're saying we're not great at doing it.
But I did just want to highlight that is,
Yeah.
that while I appreciate the testimony that they are often similar lists, it is different, especially given what we send to diversion. The last point, we are not one of the data sources, and we shouldn't be. We don't want to be. And what we appreciate very much from Vermont Statistical Analysis Center, contracted out to CRG's work, is that they often circulate their draft reports to the various stakeholders involved. And we would just, I don't know if this needs to be codified since it is working practice, but we do appreciate that draft being circulated so that we are able to offer any comments to that. And they often will reflect that in their reports. If you thought that was important to add as a requirement to the report, we would support that. I don't know if we necessarily need it, but I did just want to raise it that we do appreciate it because as practitioners, sometimes we're looking at the numbers slightly differently than the analysis.
We put that in, or is that?
No, we'll do that, but.
And could you email the precise language that would do that?
Sure. Happy to.
Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean if somebody doesn't like the data, you change it, like.
No.
Yes.
No, what often will happen, the report will be circulated, and there might be a term used that will be like, we don't use that term, we would say this. And though sometimes we might push back on if there's if there's some commentary to the analysis, we may say something, and then often there's a note, like state's attorneys disagree or something like that. This report seems very cut and dry as far as numbers. It's less digging into the whys of the number, so I don't see that as much.
The language, just not like,
Really just
give people the, right, like it,
to review the draft report before final submission, review and comment, something like that, but we can provide some like.
right.
And we do that also because sometimes we have questions.
Sure.
So we want to check ourselves, so we find that very important.
I think we might have done that in Act 40 too.
Yeah, I
That's the
will look
language,
to
I need
see
to
if
go
it
back
is,
and check it.
well, Act 40 has a whole section about in collaboration with.
Martin,
Yes, Coach.
does it make sense? Just thinking in terms of the nature of the data itself, to try to figure out what it would cost to have it presented in a dashboard format, so that, those folks that are end users, like Kim and her group, or any of the other ones, VCIC or anyone that's linked into that, because it wouldn't be manipulating the data. It would just be able to call up the data real time.
That kind of is the presentation format already that I'm anticipating, or it's going to be followed, but the same as Act 40, which I would call that no, not really.
Yeah, I mean, so Coach, we don't like to do dashboards in the way that you're sometimes used to seeing them, because there's a lot of tiny print that goes along with them. We just like to make that tiny print really bigger in paragraphs than in a report. So all of our new reports are interactive. So you have that dashboard functionality where you can explore and say, oh, how does this affect domestic violence offenders? Or how does this affect, women, or however you pick and choose variables. So we have that interactivity so that you can interact with the data. It's just not
Okay.
a dashboard.
Yeah.
It's an interactive report.
Well, that makes sense. As long as that functionality is there.
Yeah.
I would think that would be helpful to all of the practitioners. So thanks for the clarification.
All right. Anything else?
That is it.
Thank you very much. So we'll go to, am I going to Jessica or Haley next?
I'll sit up there again.
All right, excellent. And I guess the questions for you are same questions, but also want to get this view of whether we should be deleting 28 VSA Section 4 or just calling it something because it's not recidivism. So, but I'll let you proceed, however, but I do want that answered if you can.
Yeah, so I'm Jessica King-Moore, Research and Data Unit Director at the DOC. You can call me Jess.
I'm Haley Summer, Director of Communications for DOC.
Thank you both for being here.
So your first question, I'm okay with you guys getting rid of it. We don't use it. It's a lagging metric. So, if you think about the average commissioner's tenure is typically 2 years in corrections. We've had commissioners who've lasted longer, but across the United States, that's your average tenure. So if you have a lagging metric of 3 years, internally for operational reasons, it doesn't help us. We typically rely on measures like reincarceration for people like released to the field and things like that, but we share those internally and we present those in different ways. And so I guess from our perspective, recidivism was always something we calculated because we had to. But we didn't really rely on the metric. It is an indicator metric and those are always lagging, so that's okay. It's just operationally, it hasn't been that meaningful. And for all the reasons I'm sure you all have discussed about this definition, it has its major limitations too. So.
Thank you for that. I'm just hearing that you don't use that. I'm curious if what you do use for recidivism, does it match what we're doing now?
We don't really take like the more research perspective for it. Again, like if we're wanting to track, like for instance, if we're wanting to track the influence of a policy, we're going to look at like shorter term outcome measures. Like if we expect a policy to result in less returns to incarceration over a short time period, then we're just gonna be looking month to month to month. Is that trend line going down? We do test indicator measures internally. Obviously, indicator measures are really important for like population level health. But that's not gonna affect like day-to-day operations. They're more of like larger policy level implications, like what you all are looking.
So this is not gonna be confusing then, that DOC is coming out with recidivism rates of your own that.
Well, I don't think we'll continue. We won't continue to calculate it this way. If we
Okay.
do anything, we would define reincarceration rates ourselves, and we would call it reincarceration rates, and that's what we would publish. So we would never do dueling recidivism with the crime research group. No.
Okay, great.
Okay. And did you want to comment on any of the other parts?
I don't think so. I mean, we like crime research group, will partner with them. It seems like all we have to do is provide release this information for your, what was the phrase? Eligibility criteria. We can do that. So, yeah.
Well, thank you very much. For being here.
Thanks.
And before we, for a few minutes, until we start our next, I am going to add one thing to the bail rates, and that is making it clear, even though I kind of expected we were going to do this anyway, that would be county by county. There would be a county by county breakdown. I just figured that we should probably make sure we have that in here. Any other questions on any other needs for this bill? You know, we still haven't debated whether we feel that we should buy this data or not, but that we can talk about tomorrow. Yeah, come on.
Only a couple things, but one that, and we talked earlier, but you're going off the, having the arraignment as being the starting point, that it was actually occurred, will it have to actually have occurred, the arraignment, or would they have just been on the docket to appear that day?
I'd have to work with it, I'd have to go back to the judiciary to see what dates they're giving me. We call it the arraignment date, but I'd have to go back and see what date they're actually pulling. It's the date, and I understand the question. It gets a little complicated because it's also the date that shows up in everyone's rap sheets. And so like the consistency of being able to have our work reproduced and using the rap sheets as the major, that's the easiest and the most accurate way to do it. But I can get back to you on that question. One thing that I envision on this is that over the first few years, we're going to be giving you lots of stuff that you didn't ask for, and we're going to see how it all works.
And wouldn't the arraignment date be, it's officially caught by the court, be the date they were arraigned, meaning that they had to be there, as opposed to a date that they.
And there's lots of dates, but, you know, for the purposes of this, though, what we're interested in is, did the person earn a new conviction? Yes, okay. So now all we're doing with that arraignment date, whatever date it is they're really giving me, is trying to figure out how soon after their eligible date did they actually get in trouble again. So it's already a proxy. If they didn't show up, it still holds true that this is close to the time that we think that they got in trouble again. Just because they didn't show up doesn't mean that they didn't get in trouble. So where it becomes, where this kind of, you know, how numbers can change over time. Let's say he goes on a runner and doesn't show up for 3 years. This can happen, right? Then he shows up in year 4, gets a new conviction, then, you know, that's the arraignment date will be the first day he didn't show up, right? So then he gets put back into that 3-year recidivism rate, even if he went on a runner. We'll have lots of footnotes.
Yeah, okay, yeah, thank you.
All right, well, that's perfect timing. So, appreciate the testimony, everybody.
Thank you.
But I think we will, so we're all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. We're gonna take a 10-minute break. Just so we can grab coffee and
Cool off.